Hello, I'm Murray Hallam. Today I want to show you how to build your own system out of recycled materials. Here we've got a system we've used IBCs, or totes as they're known in some parts of the world, utilising our Chop 2 operating system. Now this is really good. You can see this system, it's 5 weeks, 6 weeks old now, and it's just pumping out the veggies. Everything's looking great. Even in our hot Queensland sun today, it's over 100 degrees, and everything's just working so well. 5 weeks ago we started on this project, and just have a look at it. We've already harvested from this bed. We're about to harvest this afternoon out of here because it's a stinking hot day, so we want to get it out. And look at our corn. Just look at the corn. You can see it starting to form cobs. That's only in 5 weeks. Isn't that fantastic? In this DVD, I'm going to show you how to build a system from recycled materials. In this particular case, we're using IBCs, or tote tanks as they're known in some parts of the world. These can be obtained almost anywhere in the world. And you'll see our beautiful system that we've worked out for you. We'll have a complete list of the tools you'll need, all the cuts you'll need to make, and the dimensions. So I think you're going to find that really interesting. Anyone can build one of these kits anywhere in the world. Okay, let's get on with it. Here's our 3 IBC system that we built a few days ago, especially for the filming. And you can see what we finished up with. We've got a fish tank here, which holds 1,000 litres or 250 gallons. We've made a nice wooden top for it, which we'll show you in detail later on. And here we have 3 grow beds, 1, 2, 3, that we've cut up out of the other 2 IBCs. And we also have a sump down at the bottom here, which is the water collection point. And we'll show you how the plumbing works and everything. You'll see we've already planted it up. It's got 19mm or 3/4 inch gravel in it, and it's just working just great. Our corn's coming along nicely already after only just a few days. We have a new operating system which we've coined the name Chop Mark II, and it's really great. We've been running it for over 12 months now just to make sure that it really does work and works well. And we've overcome some of the problems with the Chop system Mark I, and also it's made the operation of this really simple for the homeowner and the home builder. No longer do you have to worry about having all the grow beds exactly equal in level. As you can see here, we've got them at different heights, and it wouldn't matter if the grow beds here were lower than this or even slightly higher. We'll explain that to you as we go along. We've got the tools here that we've needed to do the job, and I just want to run through them each one and tell you what they are. We've got a sanding board. You may not be able to get one exactly like this where you are, but a sanding board is a really good addition, and we'll use that to go around the edges of the cuts we make on the plastic parts of the job. Okay, that's that. A traditional set square, large set square, obviously for squaring things off. My beautiful old trusty old circular saw, we'll use that to cut up the lumber. Man, I've had this saw for donkey's years, it goes really well. A rubber hammer, this is a very useful addition. We'll use this to just knock the concrete blocks if we need to adjust them a little bit and make them level. Our grinder, a 4-inch grinder or 100mm grinder with a very nice thin metal cutting blade on it. We need that to cut up the IBC containers a little bit later on. Drill bits, pair of pliers, a Stanley knife. You can't do anything without a Stanley knife. A level, a reasonably good quality level that you can make sure the beds are level with. Some cold galvanizing paint, we'll show you later on how to use that. Now these are the bits we'll need to undo the bolts, the base of the containers, and these are called security bits. Now the sizes you need will be T30, T35 and T40. All of these containers seem to need those 3 different size bits. A felt marking pen, a shifter, some additional cutting blades. Should we wear the others out, we've got some additional cutting blades on hand. This is a right angle drill, which is really handy for undoing these bolts down the bottom, you'll find, because if you try and use a straight one, you'll get in your own way. So we use that one. Now, if you can't get one of those, don't panic. Don't go out and buy one especially. You'll just find it a little bit harder to do. You can use a standard, ordinary, straightforward one to do it with, but it's just a little bit easier with the other one. Now we've got another 4-inch grinder fitted up with a flap wheel, which we'll also use just to smooth the edges of the metal off so there's no sharp edges. and a jigsaw. I think in America they call these a skill saw, I'm not quite sure, but here we call it a jigsaw, and we'll use that to actually cut the plastic. It's quite good for doing that. And of course, before we do any work, remember safety. We always have a pair of safety glasses on because we don't want any bits of metal and plastic getting in our eyes. Okay, well, let's get on and do this job now. Our first job is to disassemble the IBCs because we need that to make good cuts and to do it nice and neatly. We need to separate the cage from the base and get the tank out so we can cut it up. To measure accurately in, we want to do a cut and make this is going to be a grow bed, this part, and this part we're going to turn into a sump. Now we want this part to be 350 millimetres deep, and this will be 375 millimetres deep. Now I want to show you a technique of measuring from the bottom accurately. This is why we have our big square. So we can push that along the bottom. You see, we're going to determine where our bottom point actually is. See that? So we're going to measure from the inside of the square. Otherwise, how do you know where to start measuring from? Here or here or here? Because you've got quite a rounded edge. So that's the technique we use to determine where the end is. There we go. And we just need to line up our mark and make the entry. You'll find this plastic cuts really easily once you get started. So you need to exercise a bit of care to try and get as straight a line as you can, because you'll find the saw wants to wander a little bit. When you get to the last little bit here, it can be quite difficult because the plastic starts to jump around a little bit. So just go a little bit slower with the saw. There we go, we have separation. Now we're going to cut this one. Now this one will need a bit of, this is where you need some assistance, because you'll see when I start to cut in a minute, because we've made a cut, the system has become quite sloppy and floppy. So it's a bit hard to hold it and make it work. So it's a two-man job from here for this part. So let's start. Okay, this is the finished product. We've now cut up one IBC. We've taken the bit out the middle, it's become trash. This one's the sump. We find this one's the best one to use, the sump. The one that's actually the base of the IBC to start with. It's got the tap fitted to it already, and that's really handy, you'll find, for the sump sometimes. You may actually want to drain the sump, so you've already got a drain already built in. How about that? Fantastic. And this one here we will use for one of the grow beds. It has the lid in it. Some people I have seen do a similar system to this have put their auto siphon in the lid, but we don't like to do that. We like to put it in a corner, and we'll show you exactly why we do that later on. But anyway, this one is going to be a grow bed, and this one is going to be a sump. We're going to cut the next IBC and make it into two grow beds, and then we'll cut up the cages and we'll show you what we do with that. The cages are very important to keep and to use because they provide support and they stop the thing from buckling and bending. This is the bottom, as you can see, because we've got the hole here where our tap came out, and we're going to cut this off neatly with our cut saw. We're going to cut right through here, just above there, and this one we're going to cut through here. So we'll get busy and we'll do that now. So we're going to use this to deburr the edges of the metal so we don't have sharp edges to cut our hands off. Now that's great, we've taken all the burrs off and all the sharp edges off, but while doing that we've destroyed our galvanised coating. So we want to just touch that up before we go any further, and we can set that aside to dry. You'll notice when cutting the top out that the top plastic can be quite thick, so it might be a bit harder to get through than what you've become used to cutting the sides. Just notice how thick this was in these parts here. You see the top the top of it's quite thick, and same on the other side, so you might find that's a bit hard to cut through. Notice the sunlight coming through the side of the tank, and there's quite a bit of light coming through there, and I think if you don't paint the tank, in time you'll have trouble with green algae growth on the inside of the tank. So that's another reason, apart from the UV, protecting the plastic for UV light, is to paint the tank before, especially the tank, before you put it into service. We'll use our little longboard now, a short longboard, as simple as that sounds, but it's called a little longboard, and it's a boat building tool, quite good really. So we'll use that to tidy up the edges. We'll just take the sharp edges off what we've done here. Now, to support the top of our tank, because when this is full of water, remember you've got 1,000 litres, which weighs 1,000 kilos, and what will tend to happen is tend to try and push the sides out at the top, because we've taken the top out of the tank, so a lot of that strength crossways has gone from the tank. So we're going to put our two braces back into the system, and we're going to put them down slightly to one side, just down in this lower recess part, because later on we're going to make a nice wooden lid for this. So we want to put these two supports back in, and we want to put them down a bit lower. In this particular case, the shape of this particular IBC is great for it, because we can put them down and they're not going to be in the way of our lid. You can see that, they're going to be out of the way, and yet they're going to be supportive of our tank. Now we've placed the concrete blocks where they need to go, but don't worry, we're going to be issuing a PDF file with all the measurements of this, the layout measurements, so that you can get them, and that's going to be downloadable off my website. Okay, first of all is the cutout we've made for the rear one, and it goes like so at the back. Now we have that side one. Okay, and that's how it's going to look. So you can see we're going to have 3 grow beds. You're wondering what this concrete block's for? Well, we found that we need to have one in the centre to support the centre of this grow bed once we load it up with gravel. Obviously, we will get the concrete blocks nice and level before we assemble it. We'd probably have a nice gravel base instead of this grass base, and we'd go around with the level, and we'd spend a lot of time making sure these concrete blocks are all level and they're all straight and they're all on solid footing. So that's important. Okay, the next job we're going to do now is cut up the timber supports, and we'll place them for you and show you how they're placed. Once again, don't worry about the measurements. That's all in the PDF file, a complete measurement list for you. And now we're going to pick up the sump and put it in and fit the timber that goes over the sump. Already fits. Beautiful. Now our timber. Okay, it's an important thing to remember with these planks going across here. The weight of the grow bed on top is actually going to be held by the concrete block, not by this frame. If you have this frame holding the weight, remember the frame actually doesn't have any base in it, and what will happen after a while is that frame will be pushed down into the ground and you'll start having problems. So it's important to have it resting on the frame, but the load bearing is actually being done by the concrete blocks at the end. Okay, let's place this one, Lee. This one goes across here. Remembering, in real life we would have gone to a lot of trouble to make sure this is nice and level. Okay, we can put the wire cage on here for now. Now let's see what we've achieved here. You can see what's going to happen. The weight is going to be suspended on these fellows. These are going to hold the weight of the front ones. That's our back grow bed. Now we'll get our timbers for the front ones. Please be mindful when you're doing the real thing. I know I keep saying it, but these blocks have not been levelled and squared like we would normally do it. We're just doing this for the sake of the filming today. Now we'll place our grow beds in there. You'll just notice as we're putting this down that we've placed them there to take the weight in the centre of the bed. Bearing in mind also that we have already painted this. Imagine we've painted this with our favourite colour. The whole thing's been painted. We've tightened the lid up before we put it in place. Same thing, we'll check the lid, make sure the lid's good and tight. Yep. You may find, depending on the shape of your particular IBC that you've cut up, you may need to pack this middle piece up a little bit in order to support it. You'll notice that this shape of this particular bed has got a high rise in the middle like that. So we've got a wooden support underneath, and we'll have to pack that with some additional timber. Now I really can't specify to you what that should be. You just need to work that out for yourself. If you've got about a 1-inch gap there or a 25mm gap, you're going to have to get some 25mm timber and pack that up, because we need that to be supported. If we don't, when we load it up with gravel, it will tend to pull the sides in and distort the sides. It's not a really bad problem, but it's best if you support it all the way through. Okay, just to recap where we're at. We've now positioned our sump and our 3 grow beds. And we've got a nice positioning if you think about it. You can see our sump underneath there. We've got a nice little space that we can walk in here to service our pump and clean the sump if we need to and do all that kind of thing. We can get around our grow beds. You see we've got good access all the way around our grow beds for our gardening exercises. We can come over to here, we can access our grow bed very nicely. It's a really lovely layout, I think, for an IBC. And imagine this has all been painted. You've painted with your favourite, perhaps garden green or maybe black, whatever is your favourite choice. Remember, we've made sure our site is nice and level and our concrete blocks are on a good firm surface. And just recapping on that again too, we're going to have all the measurements for you in a PDF file, so you can have a complete layout of the whole thing. The good thing about the Chop 2 system is that we don't have to have the tops of all the grow beds level like we had to with Chop 1, because we're actually going to be feeding this by pressure feed. So you can see this grow bed is higher. It doesn't matter. Our water will be pumped up to it. The same with this one, the water will be pumped up to it. And they don't have to be lower than the fish tank, even though they are in this case. We can pump the water anywhere we like. Another modification we're going to show you in our PDF file is how to make a second group of grow beds and perhaps have them on the other side of the fish tank, so that you've got a really dynamic home food production system operating on a 1,000 litre tank, and then have 6 grow beds. Can you just imagine that? What a fantastic thing. Fittings. These are fittings needed to build your IBC tote system, and we just run through basically what they all are. First of all, we like to plumb as much as possible as we can with hard PVC pipe, and this is 1-inch or 25mm pipe, pretty much standard all over the world. Here in Australia this is called class 12, which means it's for high pressure. Not really necessary in what we do. There's a class 9 for low pressure, which is just a little bit cheaper to buy, but quite frankly I'd rather use the high pressure stuff. It's much better. Here we've got our standard 19mm or 3/4 inch black no crush pipe. It's really great stuff. It doesn't kink, very flexible, very durable, smooth inside bore, a little bit expensive, but once again I believe it's best to use this. Don't make the mistake of buying that clear 19mm or 3/4 inch unreinforced PVC pipe, because what will happen, you'll get kinks in it very quickly. You'll have reduced pumping capacity, and the other problem with the clear pipe is it will very quickly build up algae or biofilm in it, and once again reduced performance. There are occasions when we use the same pipe again, but this is called 1 1/8" pipe. We don't use that too often, but on the bigger systems we find this is really great. When you're using smaller capacity pumps like we like to use, for example this one here is a typical, we call it a block pump, available almost anywhere in the world, 240 volts in Australia, most of Europe, South Africa. In America it's 115 volts, same thing. This burns 100 watts, actually much less if you put a meter on it, and pumps 3,500 litres per hour. This is our standard workhorse for most of our domestic systems. Standard 3/4 inch or 19mm T-pieces, You use a number of those in plumbing up your system. Standard, once again, 3/4 inch BSP to 3/4 inch pipe elbow. We use a number of those. Our standard 3/4 inch or 19mm tap, a ball tap, you'll see straight through, allows for good flow of water. Nice and easily adjustable. 19mm or 3/4 inch four-ways. There's occasions when you might need one or two of those in building a system. 19mm or 3/4 inch elbow. And here we have these lovely snap-on, snap-off fittings that we use wherever we can because it makes cleaning so easy. For example, on the end of our pump, you can imagine our 19mm pipe being fitted on there, and we can just go straight on that like that. It's sealed. When you want to clean the pump a few months later, you just simply slide the red slider up. That moves the little jaws, the holding jaws out. Take that off the pump, and you can take the pump away and give it a good wash out. Back it goes so easily. These are also available in an elbow fitting. You can get these in the USA, Australia. I'm not sure about other parts of the world, but we can post them to you anywhere in the world. This is what we call a double nut fitting, and you can imagine very quickly what this is used for. This is used to go through the wall of the tank, of the grow bed, of the fish tank, anywhere that you need to go through the wall of a tank. That's a 25mm hole drilled, some Sikaflex or some silicone, and on the nut goes. Double nut fitting, tightens up nicely. And we can add to it a number of other fittings if we want to. For example, this, if we wanted to take the water flow somewhere with another pipe, we can do that. Or we can use one of these very clever Venturi aerators made by Flowrite. See, O-ring, very clever system, just pushes in. This nut just seals it, and we've got the beautiful flow of air with a Venturi in the end here sucking air bubbles into our fish tank. You'll notice too that our double nut fitting also has the same O-ring system. We can connect our 3/4 inch pipe to it so easily for beautiful, beautiful fittings. These make life so simple. Now, I would caution you that if you're going to do if you're planning on having a bigger system later on, you need to use as much bigger pipe as you can to aid the flow of water from these smaller pumps. You'd be surprised how quickly you have loss of water flow through pipe if it's a small diameter. We try in our systems to use this lovely black flexible pipe where we might need a bit of flex, for example, in order to get these things off to clean them and that sort of thing. But wherever we can, we plumb with stiff pipe of a larger diameter because you get nice clean water flow going through there. These smaller pumps really don't have much of a head or much of ability to pump a volume of water over a really great distance, so we have to help them as much as we can by having larger diameter pipe wherever possible. This last fitting is just as simple, available in any plumbing store. It's called a plug and waste, and we use them to good effect going through the side of the tank for drainage purposes. It has stuck on the end of it what is called a cap and lining, and this allows us to use 40mm pipe, hard pipe or soft pipe to go off and do all sorts of things. You'll see this drain. It also has a screen in it like it would if it was in your kitchen sink, which can be popped out if we don't want it to be there. But we like to have the screen in there because it stops little fish swimming down the hole and getting away. If we want to plug up the outlet, we just do it like we do in a kitchen sink. Not a problem. Now Lee is going to make up the fittings, and we're going to start fitting the actual plumbing.
We use these little green taps. They're a great straight through flow tap. We use these to regulate the amount of water going into each grow bed. That way you can make sure that the water flow going into them is all nice and even and equal. We've got these green taps on all the grow beds plus going into the fish tank, so that way we know water flow is going great.
Now that Lee's finished fitting the little green tap to all the grow beds, we can now go along and tidy up our job nicely with some cable ties and cable ties or zip ties. Can you tighten that one up, Lee? And we'll just move around the job now and finish it off nicely with some zip ties. Siphons. How do we build an auto siphon? We get lots of questions about this. Here I've got the basic components for our standard siphon that we make here, and I've got to tell you, we've made hundreds and hundreds of these now and sent them out in our kits, and over a period of time we've found out what works the best. I'll just run through it with you. Here's the basic innards of a siphon. We've got the upstand, that's that part there, which screws into the tank fitting. That's this part here, which for some reason I can't get undone. There we go, tank fitting. You can see that's the part that actually goes through the grow bed. It's got two big rubber washers and it's 25 millimeters or 1 inch size. And then we have the outlet at the bottom. This is a threaded fitting that this threads into. We don't glue these parts. That's the bottom of it that's out the bottom. That screws into there like that. That's only ever done up hand tight. Never tighten that up. The bell that goes over the top of that, you can imagine this inside our grow bed. And then over the top of that goes the shroud that keeps all the gravel out of the system. Can you imagine that in the grow bed? Okay, let's have some basic measurements and we'll show you what we do. This is made up of 1 inch or 25 millimeter pipe, and this is a 1 1/4 to 1 inch reducer. In millimeters, that is 32 to 25 mil reducer. And that's made by Spears, so they're available all over the world. And the same with the bottom fitting here as well. We've done lots of experiments comparing this kind of thing, which is commonly known as an Affinan type. We've also done, we'll show you shortly in our tank, we've also done just using a straight upstand. And we find the results are pretty much the same, to be honest with you. The only difference with this type, we find that it gives a little bit more tolerance, allowance for error in the flow through the grow bed. Okay, just like that. Now let's measure it. This is for a 300 millimeter or 1 foot deep grow bed. You cut this piece of pipe. This one is cut at 6 inches or 150 millimeters. If you're using this type of fitting, you would cut that to 100 millimeters or 4 inches long. And then by the time you add the fittings on both ends, that will come up to be the same height as this fellow here. The bell itself is cut to 255 millimeters long or 10 inches in the inches scale. And that's a piece of 60 millimeter pipe inside diameter or 2 1/4 inches in the inches scale. This is probably one of the most critical factors while we're dealing with the bell of an auto siphon. And we'll show you shortly in the actual tank. And that is the height of this, the amount of space between the top of the upstand and the top of the bell. If that is too high, let's say you made one this high, the water, it'll make the auto siphon break far too readily. It'll still start just as well, but it'll break too readily. The outside shroud, you can see we've got numerous holes drilled here. There's no secret to the hole patterning, except that you've got to have a lot more access for water down towards the bottom as the bed drains. This is 100 millimeter pipe or 4 inch pipe, PVC, cut to a height. The height of this, of course, is not critical, but it's cut in this case to 290 millimeters or 11.5 inches long. And that has on the screw top on it. And of course, that's nice when it's in the garden bed, because we can take this off to inspect. And it's important to remember that's why we don't do these up any more than hand tight, because if you can imagine that in the bed, if we need to clean, we can easily reach in there and we can unscrew that and take it out for cleaning. Here's an older style bell that we used to use, and that bell was cut to the same dimensions again, but we used to have this breaker pipe built into it. That worked absolutely fine. What would happen is as the water drained down and the water reached this level, it would start to suck air, and to assist the break, to make it a little bit cleaner, we had this breather pipe which would allow air to be sucked up into the top, and it would break the siphon. Those work exceptionally well, but we've switched over to this method because it's a little bit easier for folk to make at home. The thing with auto siphons is if the siphon will not start, you need more water flow. Now here it goes, you can see it's starting to go over the edge now. It's getting momentum and away it goes. There it is, it's developing full speed now, sucking the water out. And you'll see the water level on the outside going down, and there's quite a bit of turbulence. And look at that. How simple is that? The water is still coming into the tank at the same rate. The pump does not switch off. The pump continues to run at the same rate. If the siphon won't start like that, then that means there's not enough water coming into the tank. And if when we get to the end it won't stop, that means there's too much water coming into the tank. So you just got to regulate the flow with that's coming from your pump into your grow bed. Here it is coming out of the bottom, the outlet, letting it back into the bottom of the tank. This is our fish tank. We just assume this is our fish tank. And there's the water coming back out. You can see it flowing quite readily. You'll notice at the bottom of this outlet we have a 90-degree bend. Sometimes we need to use that, just a slight upturn in it to create a little bit of back pressure in the system so the auto siphon can start, but not too much, don't overdo it. Now if you have a look back in here, you'll see that the auto siphon is getting down towards the bottom now. We've almost drained the tank out. And you'll see just some little tiny eddies here starting to develop, and shortly it'll try and suck air through the bottom. We'll see that happen and you'll see the thing cut off by itself. This can cause difficulty. Some people that design their own systems, they have too much of a gap here and too big a pipe, and the suction just simply can't hold that volume of water up there, so the siphon breaks far too soon. Now it's breaking. Still flowing just a little bit. Notice the water down the centre. There we go. Siphon's broken, totally. What we're trying to achieve by using an auto siphon is that the pump runs continuously. This allows us in our systems to use smaller pumps rather than great big pumps that have to move a lot of water quickly. So we can fill the bed quite slowly. So what we have is we have a slow fill and a rapid drain occurring in our fill and drain cycle. Fill and drain, fill and drain. So what happens is when the water fills up to the top, it starts to flow over the top and go down through here, and it quickly spirals and starts to form a suction. And when it does that, the siphon is set up and away it goes, and it will continue to evacuate the water through these holes, up and over the top, and out back into the fish tank, so that the grow bed has a drain cycle. As soon as it breaks, the pump is still pumping, and it will start to gradually, slowly fill again. It might seem easier to put the auto siphon in the middle, because remember when we cut up the IBC, there's actually a lid there that looks like the perfect place to put an auto siphon. But I'd rather put it over here. That way I make sure that I've got water travelling right away across the bed. Because for example, if I put it in the middle here, and I'm entering the water there, or from any of the other corners, I'm going to have the opposite corner which is in danger of developing a dead zone. And we don't want that to happen. And besides that, having the auto siphon in the corner, there's a minimum of pipe work needed to drop the water back down into the sump. So it's actually a perfect setup. Remember, pipe work bringing the water in, the water flows and floods all the way through the grow bed, and finally it's dropped out through the auto siphon back into the sump. We'll now fit the plug and waste. So it just goes in like that. Rubber seal to the inside, and we would tighten these up just a little bit more than hand tight with a pair of multi-grips. These are the two outlets we make up to force the water to come from the bottom of the fish tank up and out. Okay, now these are not glued together once again. They're cut like so. They're not glued together. We've got the bottom drilled out to allow water to come up through there. This is designed to let the water come up without the fish getting through. Okay, so they just simply go in there and they just force in like so. That's it. So if you can imagine now, we've got water coming in this side over here. This is water that's coming from our sump, and it goes into the fish tank, and because we've got these arranged with the water that's coming out of our fish tank by gravity will travel up here and out and down.
Just trimming this back a bit because it was just a whisker too long. I'm going to fit this piece of pipe. I'd say it's definitely a lot to do with just by eye, really. If you start at one point and work your way to where you want to go, you really can't go wrong. Just be methodical, measure twice, cut once, that kind of idea. That way it's going to be a nice finish, neat job when you get to the end. That's our water feed to the sump, all ready to go.
Just to recap now on what we've done, we've got a water feed now coming directly from the fish tank going back to the sump, and you can see that there are no level problems. With the old Chop 1 system, we had to have all the grow beds nice and level. We had to have 4 going to them. Now this is just so easy because the sump is a long way lower than the fish tank. This is on a level site, so it's really quite easy to run the water back there. The only thing left to be done now is to have our water supply coming from the pump to the fish tank. So we'll just drill the holes for that and we'll fit that pipe up, and that will run in the same trench that you've dug for the 40mm pipe. We'll run a 25mm pipe alongside that will bring the water from the sump to the fish tank. We've made up our pipe to come. You see the pipe coming underground. Imagine that's underground, coming from our pump in the sump through to our fish tank. Once again, we've got a tap for adjustment. If we want to turn it off for any reason and just have it running overnight, for example, a lot of people in colder climates like to turn their grow beds off at night. So you would turn the grow beds off at night and leave this running, so that you've got just circulating water through there. Personally, I don't do that, but a lot of people like to do that. With Chop 2, we've got these beautiful vertical towers, as you can see here, that we've got our strawberries growing in. Some of the problems you might encounter is when you're using a very small pump, we've got to pump the water right up to the top of the tower. That's one thing that we've found here. We had to actually upsize the pump just a little bit to make sure we got enough volume of water going right up there. We did some pretty fancy plumbing on the back of all these ones here that I wouldn't recommend you do at home, only because of the cost of all the fittings. It would be far easier to run a bar across the top here with drippers going into the top of each tower. The same if you made the towers yourself out of 100mm PVC or 4-inch PVC. Same thing again. I'd use a bar across the top and drip water into each one. The other good thing about these homemade ones is that we're using just ordinary old 3/4 inch gravel to fill them. So there's good water flow going down through them, good aerations happening all the way down, and we only need a small amount of water to run all the way down through to the bottom. Works just great. We make these out of 100mm or 4-inch PVC pipe, and I just simply have my saw bench set up so that I run across and I make an exact same cut. Then I get my hot air gun, and with the hot air gun I heat the top of the PVC above the cut and bend it in when it gets soft and malleable with a screwdriver, and then hold it there till it sets off cool. Then of course we stand it up actually in the grow bed. That one's not supported in any way except that it's standing in the gravel, going right to the bottom of the gravel grow bed, and then we fill it with gravel from the top, and the gravel just runs down and fills up as it needs. That's it, it's that simple. Then plant into it with strawberries or basil or lettuce. You can grow a huge number of things in vertical grow towers. Some problems you may encounter with a vertical grow tower is that if you have too much flow, you'll find water will start to run out of the sides of each opening and down outside over the edge, and that will cause you to have evaporative loss of water. We don't want that. So you have to regulate the flow to make sure it's just enough to get right to the bottom and run right through to the bottom. Same with these better style, nice, commercially available ones. You need to regulate the flow so it's just right. You don't want too much, otherwise you'll find water will come running out of the front here, and that's a waste of water. So you've got to get it just right. That's why we've got a tap on each one, the way we've chosen to plumb it, but you could do it a little bit more cheaply by having a standard bar going across the top with one regulator on it. These commercially available towers with the kind of medium they've got them is an absolutely great idea for hydroponics. But as you can see, we're going to quickly have some build-up of gunk, fish gunk and fish waste that's probably going to block them up quite rapidly, I would think. These have been running now for 4 weeks with these strawberries in them, and they're really going really well. But it'll be interesting to see 6 or 9 months down the track how they're going. I know how well these work because the very first thing I ever did when I started in aquaponics was created some vertical towers and grew strawberries in them. So I know that they work exceptionally well, and they will work over a 12-month period. The strawberries will just keep bearing, keep bearing, keep bearing. Kiddie covers. We like to make sure we've got a wooden cover over all our fish tanks. We call them kiddie covers for the want of a better word. We're very conscious of the fact that children love fish and they love water, so water and children's a bad mix. Water, fish and children is diabolical. So we like to cover everything for that reason. That's our primary reason. Our secondary reason is that we like to make sure the fish are not in direct sunlight. So we've got this wonderful IBC Chop 2 system running outdoors. We don't have any cover over it at all. And in our Queensland summer, that's a pretty tough test. So I just want to show you the top that we've made for this one, and this is pretty much standard. We've used beautiful Australian hardwood, which is already starting to weather a bit. The particular one we use is called spotted gum. We use that because it doesn't bleed at all. It doesn't bleed anything at all into the fish tank water if we happen to get rain, which we've had a lot of rain lately. And we've just got it hinged here with some nice stainless steel hinges and some nice stainless steel screws so it doesn't go rusty. So we can lift it up at any time we want to, and we can get to the fish to have a look to see what they're doing. It's not actually attached to the tank at all, believe it or not. It just sits on top. And because it's made out of Australian hardwood, it is so darn heavy that a child would have to be probably 10 or 12 years of age to just lift it off and to move it. So that's a good feature of the whole thing. You'll see these two metal bars here. We showed you earlier when we were cutting up the kit how we wanted to put them back in to keep the sides of the tank solid. So we've put them back in. They came with the IBC. And you see the lid can be opened from either side, and we can gain access to our fish and to check our outlets and to just clean our tank and do whatever we need to do. While we're here, you'll notice we're getting quite a bit of algae build up on the side of the inside of the tank here. That's because these tanks are quite transparent to light. We mentioned earlier that we need to paint these tanks, and we didn't paint this one. It's a good idea to paint them with some dark colour. I think maybe a green or whatever suits you actually, to stop the light getting through, because that does two things. It protects the tank itself from UV breakdown and also helps minimise the build-up of algae inside the tank. Because once you've got fish in here like we have, you'll find the nutrient levels start to build up, and of course if there's sunlight and nutrient, you'll get algae. Not that algae is a real problem really, except if it gets to be too much, because algae will rob nutrient out of the system and also reduce oxygen in the system. So we want to keep it out. Let's just go over the pipe, the black pipe work, the pressure pipe that's delivering the water from the sump to the various places. You can see the pump down here. It comes up and splits into a T and goes in two directions. It then has another T that goes in two directions. This one goes forward and around to the other side, feeding that grow bed. This one goes back and around and feeds this grow bed. This side, the T, it goes forward and around and feeds this grow bed. And this one at the back goes round here and out on its way to the fish tank. So what we've effectively done is split the water in two and then split it in two again. So we're feeding 4 points. We're feeding 3 grow beds and 1 fish tank. You can see that we can adjust these all because we've fitted these nice little taps to each one. We can adjust the water flow to whatever we want. Remember, with our water siphons, if it won't start properly, you need more water, so you just give it more water flow. If it won't stop, you need to cut the water flow back a little bit. It's just that simple. Okay, well this is the end product. A 3 IBC bin aquaponics kit that you can do at home. We've shown you how to do it on the video. We'll have plans that you can download off our website. And if you're stuck for parts, we can send you a complete parts kit. Now what I mean by that is plumbing parts kit, together with the pipe and everything that you need. And we'll post that to you anywhere in the world, so don't worry about that if you need it. It's a really great little system. We've been running one for a really long time now, and we just know it works just so great. And this is what I'm going to call probably the premium recycle kit, because it's made out of recycled materials. The IBCs are obtainable anywhere, and the pump of course is new, the pipe fittings are all new, and it's just a great kit. How many fish have I got in this right now? I've actually got 103 jade perch that are about 3 months old in that 1,000 litre IBC. And I've also got 3 moderately sized sleepy cod that we showed earlier on the shot. So they're just going to be just great. They're going to supply lots of nutrient for this. And as they grow, of course, as is my habit, I'll start harvesting them as soon as they're big enough, the ones that grow faster than the others. And it'll just all work well. And probably in about a year's time, we'll be down to about 40 fish in that tank. And the fish load will be just great. It works really well that way. I operate all my systems that way, and I don't have a single bit of problem with it. In fact, the fish are just fantastic to eat. That's our Chop 2 operating system. You've seen how to cut it up, how to make it, how to join it up. It works really fantastically well. This system you've seen here over the 5-week period since we first started building it, you can see the results. I just want to remind you that we've been operating a system in the Chop 2 for well over a year. So we know we have long-term results. The system really works and really works well. You'll have healthy plants, you'll have healthy fish, and you'll just enjoy eating that wonderful chemical-free fish and veggies at home. If you have any problems, or if there's anything you don't quite understand, get onto my website and have a look at our forum, join up our forum. We've got a great forum there where there's lots of people from around the world who are doing just exactly what you're doing. And remember, we all started at some place, so don't be afraid to get on there and ask beginner questions. There'll be someone who'll answer you. If you want to email me directly, feel free to email me directly and I will answer your email and give you a few more pointers if that's what you need. What I want to say to you is aquaponics really works, as you can see, and it will work at your place using a CHOP2 operating system and recycled materials.